The moment I stepped into Daniel's house, every chair along the long dining table carried a name tag except mine. Nobody said a word about it. Aunts and uncles chatted, cousins hovered near the drinks, and the whole thing moved along as if the missing tag didn't matter. I picked up one of the spare napkins and asked Daniel, "Where's my seat?" He didn't pause. "Dad, you can stand. We're short on space." A few relatives shifted their weight, pretending to be interested in the food. His wife kept her eyes on the casserole, acting as though she hadn't heard him. A nephew hurried towards the garage. "I'll grab an extra chair." Daniel lifted a hand. "No need. We're settled." The nephew froze and backed away. The room kept buzzing, forks clicked. Someone laughed too loudly, yet none of it felt natural. Faces drifted past without meeting mine for more than a second. People know when something isn't right. They just don't always step in. My hands rested on the back of a vacant chair for a beat, then let go. No point arguing in the middle of a Christmas gathering. Daniel had made a choice, and everyone else decided to look past it. That told me more than any long speech could. I walked toward the kitchen, pretending to look for a drink. The counters were crowded, the sink stacked with serving spoons, but the noise from the dining area still carried over. Daniel's voice cut through everything in a low, confident tone. "Next year the house transfer should be done. Less stress for us." He wasn't whispering. Whoever he spoke to murmured something in response, but his statement hung there like it had a place in the open. My name stayed off every tag, yet he talked about my home, as if it were already boxed and labeled. No flare of anger came up. Just a stiff pull in my chest, the kind I'd learned to manage after my wife passed. People mistake restraint for weakness. They forget that staying calm is its own kind of strength. Daniel had counted on that for a long time. The kitchen felt crowded, so I stepped out to the hallway. Someone brushed past with a plate of cookies, tossed me a polite nod, then hurried on. A couple of kids ran behind their parents, the usual holiday chaos, none of it touching me. I picked up one of the blank tags left on a side table. A thin, stiff rectangle with no name, mine by default, I supposed. Slipped it into my pocket without thinking. It felt like proof, small, but undeniable. Daniel called out from across the room. "Dad, you eating or what?" I answered. "I'll pass for now." He shrugged and went back to whatever he was boasting about. The table cheerfully carried on drinks, refilled, new dishes set out. Somehow all of it looked staged. Families can perform together even when something underneath is starting to split. I moved toward the door before dessert arrived. The groceries sat untouched on the passenger seat while the truck idled in the Fry's parking lot. A few holiday shoppers rolled carts past the front bumper, but my attention stayed on the screen of my phone. A message from Daniel sat near the top, sent the week before. "Need you to confirm the maintenance records for the house. Shouldn't take long." Back then it hadn't seemed urgent. Now it felt different, like a puzzle piece that didn't fit until the wrong moment arrived. A tag with no name. A son telling his father to stand. And then this note about confirming something tied to the house. The phrasing bothered me. Maintenance records never needed my signature. They certainly didn't need permission. Yet he had framed it as routine, like I'd be unreasonable to question it. A couple knocked on my window. Only after a beat did I realize who they were, Marcia Alvarez and her daughter, both carrying reusable bags. Marcia's smile faded when she noticed my expression. "Richard." She leaned closer. "You look worn down." "Everything okay?" "Just tired," slipped out before a better excuse surfaced. Her daughter waved and headed toward their SUV, leaving the two of us near my open window. Marcia studied me the way people do when they've known your family long enough to spot a shift. "Holiday stress?" she asked. "Something like that." She folded her arms. "I heard about a case last month. An older client of ours almost lost his house because his son forged a property authorization, signed his name, filed it, and waited for it to clear. The man didn't find out until it was nearly done. The comment hit harder than she intended. Marcia worked at a probate office. She'd seen every variation of betrayal wrapped in family labels. Her gaze sharpened. "Why do you look like you've seen that story before?" Just hearing things that sound familiar came out slower than I expected. Marcia stepped back, giving me space, but not letting the moment drift away. You know people get bolder when they think the other person won't push back. Happens more than it should. Daniel's words from the party replayed in my head. Next year the house transfer should be done. Less stress for us? Not less stress for me. For them? Did your son ever ask you to let him handle your paperwork? She asked. He mentioned it once. Said I was getting older. Her mouth tightened. Be careful with that. I've heard that line before. She didn't linger. A quick squeeze on my arm, a small nod, then she walked toward her car. The truck cabin felt heavier after she left the kind of weight that doesn't come from anything you can touch. The phone screen brightened again. An email alert blinked a financial notice from my insurance provider. Something about an attempted address change. A request I hadn't made. A dull pressure settled at the base of my neck. Not fear, something colder, slower. A gradual suspicion carving through everything I thought I understood about what had happened at the party. Scrolling through older emails brought up another notice I had ignored earlier in the month. Verification required for billing update. There was a link I hadn't clicked. A link someone hoped I'd accept without reading. Daniel had grown up with that habit, assuming I'd just nod and move on. Letting things slide became the easiest way to keep the peace after my wife died. Each year, the boundary between helping and controlling thinned, and I hadn't noticed how much room I'd given him. Marcia's story made it clear enough. People sometimes start small when they're testing limits. Then they stretch it, then they test again. And eventually you wake up realizing half your life sits in someone else's hands. A family of 4 walked by with bags of Christmas decorations. Their laughter pulled me back to the present long enough to push the phone onto the seat. Propping an elbow on the steering wheel helped steady the rising sense of unease. Maybe I was reading too far into things. Maybe the message had nothing to do with the chair at the party. Maybe the billing notices were a coincidence. Or maybe you're trying too hard to give him the benefit of the doubt, I muttered. The simplest answer rarely flatters the people we care about. The engine hummed while I looked over the numbers again. The attempted address change had taken place 2 days before the party. So had the maintenance request Daniel sent. Both tied to the house. Both requiring some form of verification that only I could approve. Only I should approve. The phone buzzed again, another automated reminder urging me to confirm or deny the update. Denying it took less than a second. A confirmation message followed thanking me for protecting my account. The polite tone felt more grounding than anything else that day. Plans for the next morning formed on their own. A trip to the Maricopa County Recorder. No confrontation with Daniel yet. Just information. Just clarity. People say knowledge is power. Sometimes it's armor. Shoppers continued filing in and out of the store. A security truck drove past. Normal life shifting around me while something beneath mine tilted. The lobby at the Maricopa County Recorder's office had a steady flow of people, contractors, retirees, young couples clutching folders. A clerk waved me forward when a window opened. Her badge read, D. Harper. What can I help you with? She asked. I need to review any documents filed under my property address came out steady, though something in my tone caught her attention. She typed quickly, her expression shifting as she scrolled. We have several recent submissions. One of them is a full property authorization signed by you, filed 2 months ago. My hand tightened around the edge of the counter. That's not possible. I haven't signed anything in years. She turned the monitor slightly, not enough for me to see the details, but enough to let me know it existed. It was notarized, she added. Would you like a copy? Yes. Print everything. A few minutes later, she returned with a stapled packet. The first page carried my name in bold letters, followed by an elegant signature my own handwriting mimicked almost perfectly. A slight tremor in the tail of the Y stood out. I had never written it that way. Not once in my 60 years. Harper leaned forward. If you're disputing this, you'll want to speak with our fraud department or an attorney. Also, there's an active transfer record linked to this authorization. What kind of transfer A title change request? It's sitting in the verification phase. If there's no objection, it'll process automatically in about 30 days. Her words landed like a hard shove. Daniel hadn't waited for permission. He'd bypassed me entirely, using a signature close enough to pass, unless someone looked at it long enough to spot the flaw. Harper continued. Do you need anything else? That's plenty. The walk to the door felt longer than it should have. Not because of distance, because of everything unraveling in my mind. A signature forgery wasn't small. It wasn't some misunderstanding. It took effort planning, and the confidence that the person being impersonated wouldn't make a fuss. Years of going along to keep the household from boiling over. Letting Daniel handle minor bills after my wife passed. Turning away from petty arguments to avoid stretching the grief further. He must have taken those moments and built a belief Dad won't fight back. The thought crawled under my ribs. My phone buzzed before I reached the parking lot. Marcia's contact photo lit up. I'm here, I answered. You sound strained, she said. I'm looking at a document with my forged signature. What kind? Her tone sharpened. Property authorization? Full control. A beat passed. You need to visit the notary who stamped it. Get the journal entry. If the notary followed the law, they recorded who signed and what ID they used. That's my next stop. Good. And Richard, don't let him talk you out of what you're seeing. The call ended, leaving me standing next to a row of parked cars. A woman juggling 2 toddlers squeezed by with an apology. Normal life drifting on while mine bent in a direction I didn't choose. The notary's office sat across town in a small strip plaza between a tax service and a barber shop. A bell chimed when I pushed open the door. A middle-aged man at the desk glanced up. Here for notary services? No. I'm here about something you notarized 2 months ago. I handed him the packet. He scanned the first page. Confusion crossed his features. I remember this. The son came in, said his father hurt his hand and couldn't sign without pain. My stomach dropped. He told you he was signing for me. He said he had permission. I asked to see ID. He gave his own. I logged everything in the journal. Let me see that entry. He pulled a thick book from a drawer and flipped through pages until he pointed to a dated line. Under name of signer, the notary had written my name. Under ID shown, it listed Daniel's driver's license number. A note next to it read, Son signing on behalf of father unable to use hand. The notary sighed. If he lied, I should file an incident report. I can print the journal page for you. Do that. My voice felt lower, heavier. He disappeared into the back and returned with the copy. I'm sorry, he said. We get people stretching the rules, but this... He misled me. The papers trembled in my grip, not out of fear, out of something colder. Realizing a line had been crossed without hesitation. This will help your case, he added. Case. The word fit too well. Stepping back outside, the air felt dry and sharp. Cars pulled in and out of the lot, people moving through errands, seasons, obligations, while I stood there holding the proof that my own son had walked into a notary's office and pretended to sign as me. No raised voices, no confrontation, no argument between us had led to this. just a steady erosion of boundaries over the years, until he believed he could carve out whatever he wanted. The journal copy bent slightly in my hand as I shifted my grip. The house deed authorization sat beneath it, edges warmed from being held too long. A space between two parked cars offered a sliver of shade. I stepped into it without realizing needing a pause before taking another breath. People say trust is earned, but the truth is simpler. Trust is handed over piece by piece, until the wrong person thinks it's theirs by default. The garage door lifted with its usual groan, but the sight waiting on the other side stopped me halfway across the threshold. A line of dusty footprints crossed the concrete, not mine. Someone had stepped through before the dirt settled. A few storage bins sat at angles I didn't remember leaving them, one of them cracked open just enough to reveal folders leaning sideways. Crossing the floor, I nudged the shifted bin with my boot and saw a stack of insurance papers pushed toward the back. A few had been pulled from their sleeves. The tabs I'd arranged years ago back when my wife still helped organize our files no longer lined up. A memory surfaced of handing Daniel a spare key after the funeral. He'd said, "You shouldn't be alone all the time. I'll stop by and check on things." At the time, letting him have full access felt like trust. Or maybe it was grief trying to simplify life. Now it looked careless. My fingers traced one of the folders, checking what else had moved. A growing unease crept in, not sharp, just steadily grinding. The kind of worry that doesn't rush but digs deeper the longer it sits. The phone buzzed in my pocket before I shut the cabinet. Daniel's name lit up the screen. "Dad," he said as soon as I answered, "did you look at the paperwork yet? Thought maybe we could get everything signed this week. You know, make it smoother for both of us." His cheerfulness sounded rehearsed. "I'm reviewing things," I said. A pause followed, long enough to hear his irritation slip through. "Well," he replied, "don't drag it out. It's simple stuff. We'll talk later." Another beat of silence. Then the call ended without a goodbye. He always hung up like that when he didn't get his way. I stood near the garage doorway for a moment, weighing what to do next. Something larger was forming behind the scenes, and I wasn't prepared to ignore whatever came next. The forged documents, the notary's journal, now the rummaged storage, all pieces pointing in one direction. A name surfaced in my mind: Thomas Green, my late wife's attorney. He'd handled the estate after she passed. Reaching out to him felt overdue. He picked up after 3 rings. "Richard," he said warmly. "Been a while." "I need advice," I told him, wasting no time. "Someone filed a property authorization with a forged signature. There's also an active title transfer pending. I want to know the procedure to dispute it. Bring me the documents," he said. "I can't give you exact steps without reviewing the filings. Fraud cases have specific requirements. I'll come by tomorrow." "Good. And don't sign anything in the meantime." Ending the call didn't relieve much. If anything, the conversation confirmed the direction things were heading. A legal fight was no longer theoretical. Heading back into the house, a new alert flashed across my phone. Signature verification required unusual activity detected. The bank never sent messages like that unless something triggered a freeze. Driving there felt like moving through water, slow and measured. A teller ushered me into a small office and pulled up my account. "There was an attempt to change the beneficiary on your retirement fund," she explained. "We blocked it because the signature didn't match your past records. Do you have the request?" I asked. She tapped a few keys before printing a sheet. Not my handwriting. Close, but the slant on the letters was off. "Who submitted this?" It came through the online portal. Someone would have needed personal details to reach this screen. Personal details: Daniel had access to birth date, address history, the last 4 digits of every account I'd ever shared with him during tax season. information I never thought to guard. The teller asked, "Would you like to place a fraud alert on the account?" "Yes." While she entered the request, my thoughts kept circling the same point. This wasn't just boundary crossing anymore. It had edged into something calculated, someone testing financial doors to see which ones would open. The teller slid a confirmation form across the desk. "We'll notify you if anything else happens." Walking back to the truck, my steps felt heavier than when I arrived. Not because of fear, but because the scope of what Daniel attempted no longer fit into the category of misunderstanding. It stretched across property banking and identity. He hadn't just manipulated one system. He'd probed several, hoping one would slip through unnoticed. The engine turned over with a low rumble. A folded bank notice sat on the center console. I picked it up, reading the first line again, "Unauthorized attempt detected." A phrase meant to reassure customers had the opposite effect on me. Unauthorized. Attempt. Detected. All three words carved themselves into my focus. The traffic moved steadily around the lot, people coming and going with their errands and plans. Mine felt increasingly urgent. Each step Daniel took had gone further than the last. Each decision he made drew another line across my life, without permission. My grip tightened around the paper, the edges bending under my thumb. Something had shifted undeniably and dangerously. If I didn't act soon, the next notice might not be blocked in time. Sitting there with the engine running, the day's events gathered in a single realization: whatever line existed between caution and action had vanished. The situation demanded a different posture from me now, one I hadn't used in years. The truck idled while I stared at the paper, trying to steady my breathing long enough to decide where to head next. Thomas Green's office sat on the second floor of a modest building in Scottsdale, wedged between a dental clinic and a mortgage broker. His receptionist led me to a conference room, where a long table waited, polished and empty. Thomas entered a moment later, with the same calm presence he'd carried at my wife's funeral years earlier. He took one look at the stack of documents under my arm. "Let's sit," he said. "You look like a man carrying bad news." The packet landed on the table with more force than intended. He opened the first sheet and read for several minutes. No interruptions, no comforting remarks. Just his eyes moving across each line as he pieced things together. When he finally leaned back, he tapped the forged authorization with a finger. "This isn't a misunderstanding, Richard. This is deed fraud. The forged signature makes it forgery under state statute. And combined with the bank activity, he held up the printout, you're looking at potential elder financial abuse." The words stung, not because they were wrong, but because of how easily they fit the situation. Thomas continued, "Arizona treats this seriously. If the title transfer had gone through, you would have lost legal control of your property. Your son knowingly used your identity. There's no gray area here." A pressure tightened across my shoulders. Years of restraint, of dodging conflict, had built a kind of armor, but this conversation cracked it. I had spent so long believing staying calm kept the peace. Instead, it left me exposed. "My silence made this possible," I said. Thomas didn't deny it. "People who avoid confrontation tend to get targeted by their own families. You're not the first case I've seen this month." He sorted the documents into two piles. "Your first step is securing your home. Change the locks. Retrieve any keys from Daniel if you can. And do not sign anything he sends you." The phone buzzed in my pocket. A message preview flickered on the screen. "Dad, let's get the paperwork done this week. Taxes'll be a mess otherwise." Thomas noticed the tension on my face. "He's applying pressure. He thinks you'll fold." "Not this time." "Good. Now listen closely," he said. "File an objection with the county today. After that, everything goes through my office." The meeting ended with a signed retainer agreement and a list of instructions. Walking back to the truck felt different, not lighter, but steadier. The next steps had shape. Home Depot sat a few miles from the office. A clerk helped me choose a set of deadbolts and entry locks. He asked if I needed installation services. "I've got it," I told him. The words came out firm. At home, metal clinked against the doorframe as I removed the old hardware. The replacement lock slid into place without resistance. A simple task, yet each turn of the screwdriver settled something in me. Boundaries weren't abstract anymore. They were tangible, bolted down. As the sun dropped, a car rolled into my driveway. Daniel's sedan. He climbed out before the engine fully stopped. "Dad," he called, striding toward the door. "Open up." Keys jangled as he tried the lock. When it didn't turn, he tried again, harder. "What the hell, why'd you change this?" His tone climbed with each rattle of the knob. I stood on the other side of the door, hearing every frustrated breath. He shoved his shoulder against the wood. "Let me in. This is my house, too." Another slam, then another. The door shook under each hit. He shouted, "You're making this harder. Just sign the transfer and we can move forward." I didn't respond. The pounding slowed, turning into one final thud. "You're making a mistake," he warned. "I'm telling you now, don't push me." His footsteps retreated down the walkway. A car door opened, then slammed. The engine revved and faded down the street. I waited a moment before sliding the deadbolt fully across. The metal clicked into place. A small sound. Nothing dramatic, but something shifted in me as it echoed through the entryway. Stepping back a few paces, I let my hand drop from the lock. The house felt still not peaceful, but held together by something sturdier than before. The first real boundary in years had been drawn, and it came with the sharp awareness that whatever happened next wouldn't resemble any version of family I once believed in. Marcia waved me over when I stepped into the diner near Encanto Park. The place smelled like grilled onions and old coffee, the kind of spot where no one paid attention to who walked in or out. She had already claimed a corner booth. "You look like you haven't slept," she said as I sat down. "That's one way to put it. Tell me what's going on." The whole story came out: Thomas's warning, the forged paperwork, the door pounding the night before. Marcia didn't interrupt until the end. "Richard," she said, leaning forward, "check your garage camera. You installed that system last year, right?" "Yeah." "Then look at the footage. If he's been going through your papers, something might have been recorded. Families don't always cover their tracks. A server stopped by with water and left without lingering." Marcia lowered her voice. "People show their real intentions when they think no one is watching. I'll check it," I told her. She nodded. "And don't try to make sense of his behavior by giving him excuses. Sometimes harm is just harm." We parted ways in the parking lot. She squeezed my arm before leaving the kind of gesture that steadies a person more than words. Back home, the garage felt heavier than usual as I crossed to the small shelf where the security recorder sat. The memory card clicked free of the slot. After sliding it into my laptop, files popped onto the screen, timestamps organized by day. 3 weeks earlier, a video flagged for motion. Opening it, I watched Daniel walk into the frame. He wasn't alone. A man I didn't recognize followed him, tall, wearing a jacket and jeans. Daniel pointed toward the storage area. The stranger opened his phone, snapping photos of the folders I kept in the cabinet. Daniel didn't look nervous. He stood with his hands in his pockets, watching. For a long moment, I didn't breathe. They moved from one bin to the next, and the stranger lifted a few documents from the safe, taking more photos before placing them back. Not carefully, just enough to look undisturbed at a glance. The video ended with both of them leaving the garage, Daniel turning off the light as if he had every right. A slow burn ran through my chest. It wasn't fury. It wasn't sorrow either. Something steadier. Something that warned me a line had been crossed so decidedly that stepping back wasn't an option anymore. But even with the footage open in front of me, caution stayed in place. Evidence mattered. Assumptions didn't. The phone rang, slicing through the quiet. Aunt Carol's name flashed across the screen. When I answered, she didn't bother with pleasantries. "Richard, are you feeling okay? I'm fine." "Why?" She hesitated. "Daniel's been calling people, saying he's worried about you, that you're confused lately. He mentioned you're imagining threats and might need someone to manage your affairs." A bitter taste filled my mouth. "I see. He asked if I'd support paperwork for guardianship. I told him absolutely not. Thank you for telling me came out steadier than expected." After the call ended, another message arrived, an email notification from the bank. Daniel had attempted to access account information, claiming he was my primary caregiver. That phrase sat wrong. Nothing about Daniel's recent behavior suggested care. It suggested control. Forwarding the email to Thomas took only a few seconds. His reply came back minutes later. "We can't wait. The title transfer will auto-approve in 18 days. Collect all evidence. Stay alert. I'm preparing filings." Another alert chimed before I could set the phone down. A group message invitation with a long list of relatives. Daniel had sent it. Birthday celebration at Dad's house this Saturday. More space there, easier for everyone. Potluck style. Bring whatever. My jaw tightened as I read it again. He had taken my home, rebranded it as his party venue, and announced it publicly before even pretending to ask. Scrolling down the message thread, cousins responded enthusiastically. Some asked what they should bring. No one questioned why the event would be at my place. Another notification arrived, a guest list Daniel had sent separately. 20 names. Maybe more. Each name added its own weight on my shoulders, not because of the people themselves, but because of what Daniel intended. He wanted an audience. He wanted control of the narrative. He wanted me cornered enough to sign whatever he put in front of me. The garage camera footage replayed in my mind, Daniel watching another man photograph my documents like they were merchandise. The phone vibrated again. A text from Daniel this time. "Just checking, birthday party at your place still works, right? Don't make this difficult." The boldness of it settled in my gut like a stone. He wasn't backing off. He was escalating. I closed the group chat, letting the phone rest on my thigh. The list of guests stared back at me, each name a reminder that the situation had grown bigger than a private conflict. If I didn't show up on Saturday, Daniel would shape the story however he wanted. If I did show up, I'd be walking into whatever performance he planned. Neither option felt comfortable, but only one allowed me to take the wheel. My thumb hovered over the screen, sliding through the names again. Their presence wasn't the problem, Daniel's intentions were. The last line of his message flashed one more time. "Don't make this difficult." Laughter reached me before I stepped through the gate. Daniel had strung cheap streamers across the fence and dragged my patio furniture into a semicircle like he was hosting a block party. Relatives gathered around the tables carrying plates and making small talk. A few noticed me and drifted aside, unsure of what to say. Daniel spotted me and raised his voice. "Dad, you made it." He walked toward me with the confidence of someone who assumed ownership long ago. Before he said anything else, a hush rolled through the group. They sensed something brewing. I moved to the long folding table near the back and placed a fresh set of house keys on it. "Daniel," I said, "give me the old keys." Confusion flickered across a few faces. Daniel forced a grin. "Really, you're doing this here?" He turned to the relatives behind him. "Bo lam kon bimat truok kan ha." Someone shifted uncomfortably. Someone else looked away. Rather than argue, I laid the forged property authorization on the table. The air around us tightened as more people gathered. "This is what you filed," I said. 2 months ago. Daniel's smile thinned. That's ridiculous. I don't know where you got that. A second page came from my folder, the notary's journal copy. He wrote that you signed for me, claimed I couldn't use my hand. Daniel laughed sharply. That's a misunderstanding. He must have mixed us up. Then the final piece, the printed stills from the garage camera. Daniel standing beside a stranger while the man photographed documents from my storage cabinet. The crowd leaned in, murmurs swelling. Daniel's complexion drained. This is taken out of context, he insisted. I was helping. You're paranoid. Aunt Carol stepped closer. Daniel, if you didn't intend anything wrong, hand your father the keys. Right now. His mouth tightened. You're all turning this into something it's not. No one responded. People just watched him, waiting. That silence pushed him further than any lecture could. His hand dipped into his pocket. The keys jingled faintly as he gripped them. An argument hovered on his lips, but he swallowed it when he saw the faces around him, faces no longer willing to play along. Slowly, he set the keys on the table next to the new set. The metal clinked once before settling. He whispered, "You're making a mistake, Dad." I didn't answer. He had said enough. Reaching for the keys, my fingers closed around the familiar weight. No triumph came with it, no satisfaction. Only a strange steadiness, as if the ground beneath my feet finally held firm after weeks of sliding. People stepped aside as I turned to leave the table. No one tried to stop me or ask for an explanation. They had seen what they needed to see. The clerk at the Maricopa County Recorder's Office recognized me from earlier visits. She didn't ask questions. She simply handed over the form to revoke the forged authorization and guided me to the counter where signatures were verified. A stamp landed on the page, firm and final. Another clerk processed the objection to the pending title transfer. Once everything was filed, she slid the documents back across the counter. "You're protected now," she said. Walking out of the building, a weight loosened around my ribs. Not relief, just something steadier. The kind of steadiness that comes when a person stops waiting for someone else to behave better. The truck door shut with a thud. A list of digital accounts waited on my phone. One by one, passwords changed, banking logins updated, retirement access codes reset, insurance portals secured. Every alteration felt like reclaiming another square inch of ground that had been slipping for weeks. The final update required a call. "Please confirm you want to restrict all third-party access," the representative said. "Yes," came out without hesitation. Back at home, a stack of folders sat on the kitchen table. Everything Daniel had tried to photograph or move had now been reorganized, documented, and locked away. A small notepad filled with case numbers, dates, and steps from Thomas kept me anchored as each item was crossed off. Thomas checked in during the afternoon. "The filings are active," he said. "Daniel will be notified through certified mail. He'll have to deal with my office from now on. What happens next? He may push. People who get caught usually do. But the law is on your side." After the call, a text from Daniel slid across the screen. "Dad, can we talk? You're misunderstanding everything. I have reasons. Just give me 10 minutes. Another followed. "I didn't mean for things to look bad. You blindsided me at the party. Let me explain." A third arrived minutes later. "I was trying to help. You didn't give me a chance." The messages grew longer, then shorter, then stopped altogether. None of them received a reply. No resentment sat in my chest, just a calm separation. A line had been crossed, and I had stepped back onto my own side of it. Relatives called throughout the day. Some apologized for standing by. Others said they were shocked. A few confessed they had sensed something off but didn't know how to bring it up. I didn't blame them. Every family has its blind spots. Evening settled in, and I returned to the tasks that had been on hold since before the holidays. A small desktop calendar still showed last month's dates. Flipping it forward felt symbolic in a quiet way. A reminder that the days would keep moving whether Daniel learned anything or not. A stack of invoices waited near the printer consulting work from a utility company still hiring retirees for limited hours. I emailed them earlier that morning, letting them know I was ready to resume part-time. Their reply came back quickly. "We'd be glad to have you on site again." An old hiking brochure tucked into a drawer caught my attention next. The group met twice a week near South Mountain, something I had promised myself I would try after my wife passed. Years had slipped by without following through. Grief had a way of shrinking life until routines felt safer than new experiences. A registration form sat online. Filling it out took no more than 3 minutes. Before stepping out, I checked the house one last time. Locks secured, documents organized, new boundaries in place, not dramatic, not defiant, simply necessary. The drive toward South Mountain rolled by steadily. Traffic thinned after the main intersections, and the freeway curved toward open space. The mountain's outline rose in the distance, familiar yet strangely new after everything that had happened. Daniel's legal consequences would come next. Restricted access to the property, meetings with Thomas instead of me, family members seeing him without the excuse of misunderstanding. None of that required my involvement now. The system would run its course. The truck slowed near the trailhead parking area. A handful of cars were scattered along the edge. A gentle incline stretched ahead, not steep, just enough to get the legs working. Something about that simplicity appealed to me more than anything extravagant. Stepping out, I closed the door behind me and breathed in the dry air. No symbolic moment, no dramatic shift. Just a space I hadn't stood in for a long time, waiting for me to move. Keys rested in my pocket, the right keys, the ones that belonged in my hands. The trail began a few yards ahead, a narrow path of packed earth rising toward the foothills. I walked toward it, letting the first steps carry me forward.